Happy to be in the rotation.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
it
me too.
is Sunday, the 18th of October, 2020. We are still in the 10th month of this year of 2020, which has been so wonderful for all of us that many of us want to chop our own heads off and throw ourselves into the river. But luckily, none of
Myself
us have
included.
actually done that.
Myself included. Yeah, it's been a hard year. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Like, there's a lot of obstacles that have been going on. Currently here at Chillum, we had a few staff members that came up with COVID. So I'm working extra hard, even harder than when I normally work. And
But luckily, you already had it. That's why I'm not wearing my mask right now.
well, and that's also the thing too. Like, there's a lot of mental health issues that are popping up, starting to pop up, have been an issue for a while, and not mental health with myself. I'm peak mental health conditions, but there's a lot of people really feeling it right now. So I'm kind of happy we're doing this show and we get to get together every Sunday and talk about things that matter and moving forward and whatnot.
Well, it's interesting. This is what they call a novel virus, which means we've never had to deal with it before. So we really didn't have a playbook. We didn't have a manual. It's kind of like when you have your first kid. You guys haven't dealt with that yet, but when you realize this kid does not come with a manual, what the hell do I do? Well, this is the same thing with this virus, basically. We did not know exactly how to handle it. And the first thoughts, of course, were the best way to do it is to do what they did in China and those folks and do a total lockdown, which is okay at the very beginning. When you haven't got a clue as to how else to be handling things, you need to shut it down so you can regroup and figure out exactly how to handle this. Well, unfortunately, those lockdowns have had negative effects. But in lieu of the fact we don't have the full vaccine or treatment, etc., we have to be careful because any misstep causes a loss of lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, weed helps. I don't know if I could have made it through 2020 without Rick Simpson oil, man, because all the anxiety and everything, it's really helped keep me on, balanced, I guess.
And of course, as an anti-inflammatory, if you are dealing with inflammation processes that occur because of COVID, then cannabis does help in that aspect. Is it a full treatment or cure? No, it's not. However, it does lessen symptoms.
And I think that's a nice segue into what we want to talk about today, because, our government has definitely screwed up a little bit when it comes to COVID.
Just a tad.
Just a tad. A whole freaking lot.
A little bitty dab.
But, we got elections coming up, and this is America. We got the opportunity to get people out. And, it also, cannabis has been the most helpful thing. So, maybe we should talk about how we're going to be able to keep cannabis in our lives come this election.
Now, I know we've had several other states that have already started in-person early voting, and the turnout has been absolutely amazing. This is something I've been actually hoping for so many years, that we actually get an election where we actually get more than just 27% of the electorate actually going to the polls. Mm-hmm. I mean, people used to always say back in the day, Gil Scott Heron once mentioned the fact that Reagan was elected with less than 30% of the electorate actually voting, and how can that be a mandate? Well, that's the case. If we don't have enough people voting, you don't have a mandate of the people. You have a mandate of the people who wanted to go to the polls. Mm-hmm. And this has changed everything. I guess we could thank the current administration for motivating people to get to the polls as in the numbers that they have. And we here in Florida are starting our early voting tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that means that if you have not already mailed out your ballot, you can go to the polls and drop off your ballot at one of the drop-off boxes there. So you won't have to wait in line that long. And you can make certain that despite any possibilities of screw up from the U.S. Post Office, which has been debased, your ballot, you can track it and verify the fact that it got to where it had to go. And that is so, so important. And also, be aware of the fact that some people are idiotic enough to have actually put signs saying, drop-off box here, and they put the sign with an arrow on it towards the drop-off box, but they're putting the sign on garbage cans. So people are actually putting their ballots in the damn garbage can and thinking that sign means this is the drop-off box. Well, you have to realize that drop-off boxes do not look like garbage cans. They look more like mailboxes. So if you see a drop-off box that looks like a garbage can, do not access it.
So
People will think you're high.
it's like, yeah, man, I voted. Every vote counts, man.
Gary, that brings up a good point about also voter suppression tactics. I mean, again, you touched on it that in this country, we have, less than a quarter of the people actually voting, and only half of them are actually making the decision to elect next leader. And in thinking about that, there are powers that be that do not want to see more people turning out. In California, as a matter of fact, the Republican Party out there set up their own drop boxes and has since been ordered to take them down, and they have refused to. So there were ballots going missing. So do not put your ballot in anything except an official Hillsborough County or Pinellas County, wherever county you're living in on the Sun Coast, supervisor of elections drop box. And if you have a question about that, please visit votehillsborough.org, and you can find out the locations of where those drop boxes are.
So we know how to vote, right? Now the question is who to vote for. And I also want to kind of throw something in here because we also kind of need to know what to vote for. Because I mean, Florida's got this Amendment 4 thing going on. And I don't think people know how serious this amendment is, and if it actually passes, how hard it is for common people to really make a change. It's already fucking difficult, to pass Amendment 2 to pass medical marijuana in Florida. We had to go through some serious hoops and hurdles. And now it's going to be really bad. And I'm happy I got you guys here to talk to me about it because
it's interesting.
I don't know anything about it, to be honest with you. Nobody's talked to me about it.
Well, sometimes
out there.
Things at their surface are not exactly as they are meant to be. And like, for instance, you will see that we had these hearings this last week to go ahead and get Amy Coney Barrett into the Supreme Court. Was it really all about getting a ninth Supreme Court justice, or is it about a different agenda? Is it about getting somebody in there who would overturn Roe v. Wade? Is it about somebody who would get rid of the Affordable Care Act? Is it about a justice who will do other highly conservative things that currently hadn't been done before? Or is it just about getting a fair-minded person who is intelligent enough? And believe it or not, in many instances, I have heard that there are folks on the left who are saying, well, this woman seems like a very fair person. Seems like she's very much into jurisprudence and about the letter of the law. And so therefore, she won't be subjective about her methods. Be honest with you, she seems like a nice lady. She seems like an intelligent lady, but she is human. And human people have opinions. And it's hard to totally squelch that. That's what makes a great Supreme Court justice from a person who can be a Supreme Court justice. And that is to put their opinions aside and be able to look at an issue in all of its aspects without putting any subjective personal spin on it. And along with the same situation in regards to the Amendment 4. Amendment 4 originally was tapped in the legislature to find ways to keep people from putting new taxes on the ballot. But in fact, what you have right now is a situation where if you're a citizen and you want to put through a citizen initiative to change the Constitution in the state of Florida, this ballot initiative has to go through 2 election cycles, as in 2 years apart. And think about what goes on behind that scenes. We have had 2 ballot initiatives for legalization of cannabis. One, of course, being Legalize Florida. One being the MILF, or Make It Legal Florida ballot. And, of course, we have Floridians for Freedom. Floridians for Freedom never got enough petitions to get it on the ballot. The other 2 managed to get to Supreme Court review, but they didn't get the 750,000 number of petitions necessary to get on the ballot that year. This would require a ballot initiative to not only have to do that once, but twice. Get 750,000 ballots twice in order to get on the ballot twice or to be passed.
Which is freaking impossible.
It is extremely expensive. It makes it nearly impossible for any citizen initiative to go forward. And that's one way that the legislature can keep greater control over the Constitution and take it away from the people for whom it belongs to.
Cano, I think it was you that told me that, like, if you the current state of things in Florida, if you want to get a constitutional amendment passed, you need at least $2 million, something like that. Maybe even more.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Carlos. It is really, like Gary said, even starting to get out of reach for grassroots to do it. But I mean, it is possible. I mean, we've done an amendment 2. We've seen other amendments like protecting our wetlands get passed. We've seen amendments like banning greyhound racing for to preserve these beautiful animals that everybody loves. And so it is possible still. But if Amendment 4 were to pass, and you would have to get on the ballot within 2 election cycles. I mean, it is difficult enough. I recall the summer of 2015 working 16-hour days, across 8 counties to get enough petitions collected for Amendment 2. And recall how heartbreaking 2014 was, with just a small portion of the ballot, getting 58%, falling short of the 60. And that goes back to what we were talking about how hard they make it. You used to just need a simple majority to pass an amendment. Now you need 60% to pass it. Now they're trying to add even more hurdles to it. The fact is that the Florida legislature does not want the people having the power. They think that because they're the elected representatives, they deserve to have the power. And that thinking is why we need to toss most of their asses out this November.
Yeah, because we have passed constitutional amendments in the past and the legislature has stepped in afterwards and have in their duties of creating the rules, regulations, and things of that sort, totally taken funding away from citizen initiatives and the power away from citizen initiatives, including putting in preemption so that even municipalities cannot go forward with it. Yeah, I would have loved to have gotten Representative Jamie Grant to come on and talk about his amendment and where it came from, just to hear the other side of it. I don't think he'd come on, but Jamie, if you're listening, would love to have you on.
Garrett, you bring up a great point in that there are 2 key amendments in recent memory that we can see how they've screwed the pooch on implementation. Number 1 that comes to mind is, rights restorations for people who have served their time.
Amendment 4 last time.
Possibly. And then the other one that comes to mind
sounds like it's time to feed the dogs, Cano.
The dogs come in the house, got to shake the bag. They hear that and they're like, "Oh, wait, what am I?" So, shaking the. I didn't want to interfere with what we got going on, but the other thing that comes to mind is that they screwed the pooch on with we the people passing an amendment and then they doing something different. Is of course Amendment 2, our medical marijuana system. And it is just too much to think that we could pass a bill, pass a constitutional amendment, want medical marijuana for every single person, and then the legislature comes behind us, adds in all these restrictions, just like we the people wanted people who have served their debt to society to be able to vote, and then they come in behind us and add in all these restrictions. So if you're looking for a guide to amendments, again, we'll have a voter guide coming out tomorrow. You could look at on via email. But I would encourage everyone to definitely vote no on 4, to vote no on 3, to vote no on 1. Pretty much vote no on all the amendments with the exception of Amendment 2. And we can talk a little bit about Amendment 2 if y'all care. I mean, Carlos, I'd love to hear your perspective as a business owner. But Amendment 2 really does help catch wages up over the next few years here in Florida.
Increase of minimum wage.
Exactly. And it's interesting. John Morgan is actually one of the gentlemen helping fund that and organize that. Much of the same Amendment 2 organizing team that we saw for medical marijuana in 2016 is helping push this. And I mean, I think it's time. If you look at $8 an hour in Florida, $8.56 is the minimum wage. And you see, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. And yet it costs, you got to make $19 an hour to afford a 1-bedroom apartment in Florida and not put yourself below the poverty line. So, I mean, a $15 minimum wage, which will happen over time, it won't happen overnight, is a good start to keep things trending. I mean, what we see is more and more wealth from the working class and middle class being diverted upwards the pyramid in this country, and there's no trickle back down. And so I think Supporting increasing the minimum wage is something I support. But Carlos, let's hear your perspective as a small business owner. What do you think about it?
Yes, Carlos.
Yes, Carlos. Yes. You know, you guys know I tend to, when economics is concerned, I tend to be a little conservative. But the truth is that our inflation has rose way too high, and our minimum wage hasn't gone up for shit. As a business owner, working here at Chillum, it's an entry level job, and I already refuse to pay my employees at minimum wage. I pay them a bit higher. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's actually kind of needed. I don't know what that would do to affect my business. It would put up costs, but not by entirely too much. I think it's something I'd be able to handle. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm a business owner, people throw hurdles at me. I'm an entrepreneur and people throw hurdles at me this whole 2020. I've been getting hurdles thrown at me, and I survive. I adjust. I make moves, and, if the government, the way I see it, if the government raises minimum wage and you as a business owner are so upset about it that you're afraid of being put out of business, you're probably not a good entrepreneur.
And let's be certain, the medical cannabis business here in the state of Florida is not doing too bad financially. In fact, sales have been up in the medical cannabis business since this whole pandemic even started. And they've been very creative. They've been very productive in regards to having curb drop off and having people come to your car and things of that sort. But one thing I have not seen, and this does still happen, the minimum wage bill would actually get everybody started as of next fall to make at least $10 an hour. Right now, there are people working their butts off in the MMTCs that are not even making that.
Yes.
And I think, and we do know that they are making a profit, and we do know that they can afford it. And what it comes down to, and the whole basis of this is the opposite of Reaganomics, of trickle down economics, is build up economics, which means that if the people have more money in their pocket, they will spend it on those businesses, and so those businesses will get more money. If everybody is broke and they come home and they don't spend their money, then the economy slows. And therefore, we need to build up our economy by making certain everybody has a better chance of being able to have more money to spend. And in Florida, where we are so heavily into the service industry, we have a lot of people who are getting paid minimum wage, and sometimes, and believe it or not, this is a 1934 law, which is still in place. People in the agricultural sector and also people who have a disability, their employers can get a special certificate from the federal government to pay their employees less than minimum wage. And that's why you get agricultural workers picking tomatoes in Imaloki for $3 an hour. Or you get people who are blind who get paid as little as $1.80 an hour. I would have liked to have seen a increase in tipped employees at minimum wage as well, but that did not happen in this particular bill. But then, and again, if you have people who go to a restaurant and they can barely afford their food, they're not going to tip. And so therefore, those people who work strictly on tips alone end up getting hit, taking the brunt on that. So we're hoping that we can be more fair to all as far as wages is concerned and build our economy.
In retail, you can kind of see how money is spent. There's times when I'm just like, showing up for work, and all of a sudden the numbers are like crazy good, and then I look at the date, and it's like I have no reason why we're making such great money today, and then I look at the date and it's the 15th. These people aren't able to make such an income where they're able to spend money on themselves on just like a normal day. And I really think that, raising this minimum wage is really going to help a lot of people. It's going to help me out. You can't afford marijuana, you can't afford CBD, and you can't afford pipes when you don't have any money, And
a lot of people were talking about the fact that in regards to stimulus, that we can't be giving people additional unemployment benefits, that $400, $600 more because they might not want to go back to work. That is oftentimes a rich person's idea as to why they don't want to give it out. But the fact is, if you are unemployed and you are desperately waiting to get back to work, you will have the money to be able to pay your bills, and I guarantee you nobody is going to be saving that money. They're going to be out there spending it, and that helps those businesses who right now are suffering greatly. make certain that they have people who actually can't afford to go ahead and pay for their goods, and also tip their employees as well, because they are getting that extra $400 to $600 in unemployment when they are unemployed. But a lot of people would prefer, I can tell you for a fact, to be out there working as opposed to sitting at home waiting to see if they can afford their next meal.
Freaking Mike's pen. There's a fly in the studio today, guys, and it's driving me crazy.
It's Mike Pence's fly,
Mike
I do
Pence's
believe.
fly, guys.
He's keeping a close eye on us for some reason. He always wanted to be the fly on the wall. Well, right now we got the fly on the microphone.
It looks like I got a customer right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
So
this is the benefit of a retail establishment.
For everybody listening, then, and looking at a quick guide to the amendments, Amendment 1, is, again, just purely about semantics. It talks about it states it would change from every citizen can register to vote as provided by law to only citizens can vote. Only citizens can register to vote right now anyways. And every citizen, that key distinction, every citizen can register to vote. That is exactly what our Constitution is about: equal rights. Being a citizen, everyone has the same rights. When we start playing around with the language in our Constitution like that, that opens up the door for so many different legal challenges and waste of our tax dollars on things. So voting no on Amendment 1 makes total sense. As Carlos touched on, Amendment 2, even though you may hear the sky is falling from the chambers of commerce and some of the powers that be, small business owners like himself, a year from now would be required to pay, their employees $10 an hour. Like you said before, if you can't pay people, above minimum wage, and this wage hike is going to destroy your business, maybe you're not conducting business as you should. And this will impact more of those larger employers more than anything, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the ones who pay poverty wages, and that is part of their business model in order to make profits. So definitely increasing the minimum wage makes sense for helping all Floridians in our economy. Amendment 3 touches on the idea of jungle, or what is also called blanket primaries, where it would, instead of having these current party primaries like we do that are closed in Florida, would create a new primary system where the top 2 candidates for the governor, the cabinet races, and state legislative races would be the ones that are on the ballot in general. What would create a problem with is that if you live in districts that are either heavily Democratic or heavily Republican, there will never be an alternative to a certain party's candidates with Amendment 3 if it were to pass, meaning that ideally people would never get to vote for a Republican or a Democrat for governor, depending if one party or the other had dominance over more voters. So that's definitely a concern, especially in smaller counties and such. People want to have that opportunity. And, we already have a problem now with incumbents, creating these fiefdoms, staying in office for so many years, and then, shuffling offices to get around our as a loophole around term limits. So definitely voting no on Amendment 3 is something that, would be best for us. Again, Amendment 4, keeping the Constitution clean is what the political committee behind it is called. But the fact is that they want essentially a mulligan vote. They want you to be able to have to get something passed over two election cycles. And so the first election cycle wouldn't count, but essentially it'd be kind of like a primary. We're like, oh yeah, you got a majority, then let's send this to the next election cycle. It's not cheap to get close to 1 million validated voter signatures, as we touched on before, in addition to public marketing campaigns, in addition to outreach through field programs. So voting no on Amendment 4 makes total sense, because all it does is take away the power of the people to pass their own laws.
I mean, look at how many years Regulate Florida has been raising money just to be able to get those petitions together, and they've gone through several cycles trying to do it, and then they had to back off again due to amendment last time in regards to the fact that the petitions are no longer good for 4 years; they're only good for 2 years. Correct?
Yep.
And so that has caused additional problems with that. And so we do need to keep the process clean, but making it such that it's impossible for citizen initiatives to go through, that is not going to keep it clean. Now, just in regards to legalization of cannabis, there have only been 2 states in this entire country that are able to put through that kind of law through the legislature, that being Illinois and just recently Vermont. Everybody else has had to go ahead and do it with citizen initiatives or the proposition system over there in California. And you'd basically be taking that away, and so making it more difficult. And that comes to our next point in regards to elections concern. I'm going to, you can go ahead and finish the amendments in a second. And that is that we have to look at all those down ballot races as well. This is not just a presidential election. No matter whether you are adamant about who you're going to vote for president, we still live in a state which has to deal with state laws, especially when it comes to cannabis is concerned. So that's why it's so important that you know who you're voting for representative and for senator. And you need to go ahead and just take a look and see where they stand on these issues, if they've been in the Senate or in the House, how they voted in the past, that kind of situation. Voting is more than just filling in an oval. Sometimes, and I hate to use that expression, but do your research.
That's crazy to me. Only 2 states passed through the legislature.
Yep.
Yeah,
that shows major. Like, I hate politics.
I'll be honest with you, Illinois' law is not perfect. I mean, look at the tax rate they've stuck on that. It is outrageous. I mean, it's not as bad as Ohio. Ohio is really screwed up. I mean, I say, for instance, you guys take a look at the price of things. One of my favorite gummy products is from a company called Wana. If you go to Ohio and look for a 10-piece jar of Wana gummies, you're going to pay $46. Whereas in Michigan and in other states, you're paying sometimes $15, sometimes $20. And that, again, has to do with the way the system is set up. And of course, Florida has their own issues, which hopefully we'll be fixing soon. But we have to take things one step at a time. All right, go ahead. You were on Amendment 5.
Yeah. So Amendment 5 has to do with property taxes. It increases, from the current 2 years to a 3-year time frame for the Save Our Homes property tax benefits that can be transferred from a prior home to a new one. Essentially, what this would do would create a small revenue loss to local governments. It basically creates a tax savings of about $1,700 for every $100,000 that your home is worth. So, local governments are going to lose money. I mean, if you care about local governments and in this COVID crunch, you don't want to see them losing more, voting no would make sense. All in all, there isn't a strong opinion either way on this, as far as just in the grand scheme of things. If you think, do you want less tax dollars coming into your local governments, then voting no would make a lot more sense for you. Local governments, have everything from funding after school programs to indigenous healthcare, to developing your roads. And if you already see, how it looks out there in the county and in the interstate, maybe you definitely would want more taxes continuing to come in rather than less. And then the final amendment on the ballot is Amendment 6, which is veteran survivor benefits. This is something that to me, touches, because many of us have family members who served in the military. Many of us have, relatives who were, combat veterans who have passed on, and then you might have a grandmother or a grandfather left behind. And this essentially allows the property tax discount that combat disabled veterans age 65 are to be allowed to transfer to their surviving spouses until the spouse either remarries or sells the property. There's no visible opposition to this. I don't have any opposition to this. So, vote your heart on this and how you feel. But Florida has more than 1.5 million veterans, the largest such veteran population in the country. And so about 800,000 of them are over 65 in Florida. And so this will be a small revenue impact, but, that's offset by the benefit of, Florida, continuing to be a great retirement destination for our veterans. So, vote your heart on this. I'm going to more than likely vote yes on Amendment 6, because I recall when my grandfather passed away from developing leukemia from Agent Orange when he was stationed in Thailand during the Vietnam conflict, that, my grandmother fought tooth and nail to have his benefits recognized and go through the whole process. And just our families in general who serve so much to this nation deserve whatever benefits that they can get. And Carlos, you created a safe space for veterans at Chillum, by allowing groups like the We for Warriors Project to meet and such. So what are your thoughts on this amendment?
I honestly don't have any info on it.
I can tell you that they usually get one of these amendments every other election or so. And it's to tug at the heartstrings, because people will look at the ballot and they'll say, "Oh, I see. That's for the surviving spouses of disabled veterans. They deserve this tax break after their husband has passed away." And originally, the tax break had a lot to do with the fact that you've got somebody in the family who is not able to be a full wage earner and has the problem of having to deal with the cost of care of somebody who is injured in combat.
Yeah,
and,
like why,
but once they've passed away, those costs are not there anymore.
The family, the person that goes and fights for this country, of course, suffers, but a lot of people don't talk about how the family suffers. And, whether it's, having a loved one that's away at combat, or, having to deal with having somebody with PTSD in your family, and how that affects people around you. We should be able to help these people out too. I think these people sacrifice for a country just as much. I mean, maybe not just as much, or I don't want to put a weight on it, but they sacrifice for this country too.
One thing they do not have in the write-up for these amendments is what is the loss to the municipalities and lost taxes, as opposed to the benefit for those people who will be able to keep those benefits at home. There's no way to compare whether it really is even or not. I mean, is all of a sudden your millage going to have to go down, and all of a sudden your kids are going to have to have far less money spent on their education because they don't have the tax dollars anymore, or those roads aren't going to be able to get fixed anymore because of that we don't have municipal dollars. In Pasco County, we have this thing called penny for Pasco, where they added one extra penny of sales tax. People fought that tooth and nail, but does a penny make any difference to you? Whereas this money can be spent towards building a new high school because of the expansion of the community and things of that sort. And in actuality, here in Pasco County, that penny for Pasco money is actually might just go to help farmers who are starting up hemp farms. So these are the kind of things we have to be mindful of. So it's hard to get all the information involved.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, we're definitely happy to do our part and provide as much information to our members and the general public. So keep a lookout tomorrow for our voter guide that'll be posted on our social media, Facebook and such, and going out via email to our membership. So we'll also have some candidates in there that have received our endorsement because of their pro-cannabis policies and their pro-patient policies when it comes to cannabis. In this day and age, it's not enough just to be pro-cannabis, but do you support a patient-centric system? Do you care about putting patients first and putting patients over profits? And those are the type of candidates that we want to support, for election. And with that being said, there is actually a Supreme Court justice up for retention. And in the Florida Supreme Court, as we've seen time and time again, have stiff voters when it comes to important cases like the ones that are currently being heard over the constitutional amendments and over the current vertical integration of Florida's medical cannabis system with Flora Grown. So, Gary, if you want to touch a little bit about the Supreme Court justice up for retention and why people should vote in that race.
Supreme Court Justice Munoz was put into place by DeSantis in the first couple of days of his governorship, and that was to replace a moderate judge at that point in time, so he could go ahead and tip the scales and make it far more conservative. And he has not been voting for us. I would have loved to have had Adam or Jeff or Joe in from Flora Grown today, because that is their bill, that is their baby, and they actually had a second set of. A second set of oral arguments that happened on last week to find out if the Florida law actually creates what is called a special law, which means it only encompasses certain people and not others. And he did not seem like he was pushing in our favor. but that is his conservative background. We need to make certain that people do go with. I like people who claim that they're textualists, people who believe that they are going by the text of the law and exactly what it means, or originalists, where they have to start thinking about how the law, what people were thinking when they originally wrote this law. I think you need to be a little more progressive and think about how will this law impact today's society. That would be kind of like a mixture of textualists and originalists and intentionalists. So he is not one of those. He is very conservative, and that is why I am not in favor of Justice Munoz being retained. As far as Supreme Court justices and appeals justices, these are guys who are usually brought in by the governor. And right now, the governor has the Supreme Court has been, especially the Supreme Court of Appeals, was packed by Governor Scott, if I can use that expression. They packed the court with conservative judges, and we need to have a more fair balance on both the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals here in the state of Florida. So my recommendation is go ahead and check out these judges. If you don't know anything about them, you could go to the League of Women Voters nonpartisan page. They have more interesting information in regards to the background of these judges, and decide for yourself if after these governors have put those people in place, do you want them to be retained? That is your choice as a voter.
And Gary, you touch on something that really struck a chord with me. I have no problem with a conservative justice if they're going to be a true originalist. The original founding fathers grew hemp, they smoked weed, and so if you're going to take that point of view on it, then hey, great. But we have too many justices that are prohibitionists, and they get into this whole letter of the law type of deal. The fact is that in this country there is a constitutional crisis in regards to cannabis prohibition, where we have a federal government who has declared it something that has no medical value, and yet 40 states in this country have said there's some type of medical value, whether they recognize CBD or they recognize the rest of the cannabinoids as a plant as having some type of therapeutic value for patients. And so we definitely need to see some change at the federal level, which is why it's so important that folks research the presidential candidates and their stances on it, that they research their members of Congress and their stances on it, because we continue to see that difference between state and federal law. Most recently, the United States Supreme Court chose to not hear the case that Marvin Washington, Alexis
Bortel,
Bortel and Jose Belen have been suing to have the Schedule 1 status that the DEA currently supports, challenged essentially. And so that kind of breaks my heart, in the fact that the Supreme Court chose not to hear that case. And that's why the next president is so important, because having justices on the Supreme Court that are willing to hear these important cases is so vital. And when you have justices that are there and appointed politically, it does create a lot of issues. In regards to the current Supreme Court selection process with Amy Coney Barrett, the fact is that the votes are there to confirm her. And short of more people coming down with COVID in the Senate and not being able to carry out that vote, I don't think there's much that we the people can do at this point, other than voting in this election and making sure that the next set of justices are appointed by the right person and have the right values to address these laws.
Now, let's be clear. The number of cases that actually get before the Supreme Court of the United States of America is approximately 2 to 3% of all those cases that are brought to them, that they do what they call take jurisdiction of that particular case and actually do run that case. So the chances of Balin's case getting before the Supreme Court without a major political publicity push and things of that sort was low, and so that's unfortunate, but that is the way it is. Over here, our problem is more of a point of priority. We do get the Supreme Court that does take on cases. They did take on the Flora-Grown case, and of course, they had no choice but to have to review the MILF and the Regulated Florida case, and yet we have to wait a long time for these opinions to be brought out, because they do prioritize what they want to work on. I can tell you that the original impetus for Regulate Florida, I believe they hit their 80,000 petition thing. I think it was last October. And we still have yet, I guess the oral arguments were in February, and we still have yet to get a opinion on that particular ballot initiative. MILF actually hit their ballot thing, I think it was in October of this year. And of course, they've gotten their oral arguments out of the way as well, but we may be waiting a long time before we get those opinions. And of course, Flora Grown, oh my goodness, now we got the case has been going on for 3.5 years in the making. And we are still waiting for any kind of opinion. And now that we had these extra oral arguments this last week, it may be another 4 to 5 months for us to wait for an opinion, which will literally change the entire face of the medical cannabis program here in the state of Florida. The impact is massive, and yet the priority for getting this brought to opinion is low. Because we're wanting to work on other things. For one thing, our Supreme Court here in the state of Florida has to see all death penalty cases. All death penalty appeals go up to the Supreme Court, and for some people, that's good news, because there are some people who have been in jail on death row now for 15, 20 years and still waiting for their appeals. Yeah. But they do get priority in the Supreme Court as well as adjusting rules and things of that sort. So that's the rigmarole in regard to the Supreme Court.
So I think it's that time, guys. So what do we do? What do we vote for?
Is it time for Dad?
Definitely get out there and cast your ballots. Again, when it comes to the amendments, vote no on 1, vote no on 3, vote no on 4, vote yes on 2, yes on 6. Amendment 5, again, that's kind of up to the voter's choice. If you want less money coming into local governments, maybe you want to vote no. If you want to see people get an extra year on a tax break on their homes, you can vote yes. So, but all in all, voting no to retain the current Supreme Court judge that's on the ballot, Judge Munoz, makes sense, as Gary just pointed out, of how the Supreme Court has operated in favoring we the people. And all in all, there are some key races on the ballots depending on what county you live in. The state attorney's race is highly important and is on the ballot. And I just want to say that, Andrew Warren has, in Hillsborough County, has been a change and a breath of fresh air. Replacing, back in 2016, Mark Ober, who was the 3rd worst prohibitionist in America. He put more people in jail in his time for cannabis than he did all violent crime combined. So it is vital that we continue to, reelect a state attorney who is, deprioritize cannabis convictions and supported civil citations. And on that note, in Orange County, in the Orlando Osceola area, you have Monique Worrell up for election, and she also supports the decriminalization of cannabis. And so I think that having state attorneys that support decriminalization, who want to make sure that this is not an issue that is clogging up our criminal justice system, so that way our tax dollars can focus on prosecuting, murderers, rapists, and violent criminals, I fully support these candidates for state attorneys. So there'll be a voter guide coming out tomorrow for you all, but all in all, pay attention to the races that affect our criminal justice system. And of course, do your research on your legislative officials that are up for election. And remember that this is not the only election year. There will be another election coming up in 2 years. That is vital. We vote every 2 years. And if you live in the city of Tampa, those elections are actually in the off year. So in 2 years, there'll be a state election. And then the year after that, there'll be municipal elections. So pretty excited to be able to vote in all of those. If you don't vote in every election, do your civic duty and do that. And as the great Stan Lee once said, with great power comes great responsibility. And we, the people, have so much power in our hands with the power of our vote. But we also have the responsibility to research the amendments, to research these judges, and to research these candidates to see how they're going to affect our lives and the lives of our children and future generations.
Now, I thought that was Peter Parker's gentle Uncle Ben, but what do I know? But here's my plea for you guys. We at Suncoast Normal work on legislation for you, and in order to do that, we have to have a legislative body that is willing to work with us. So keep that in mind when you go ahead and look at those down ticket races, as far as who you want for state senator and who you want for representative. Now, I don't think that either party has a monopoly on being pro cannabis or being pro patient, but because there are moderates out there on both sides. But go ahead and take a look and see who you believe will do the best for you, not only just in cannabis, but all those issues that are important to you. It's good to be a single issue voter, but obviously it's not the only issue out there. But make my job a little bit easier, guys. If you want employee protection, if you want patient protection, if you want tourist reciprocity, if you want to have a home grow bill within the next session or two, it's not going to be easy with Speaker Sprouls. He's kind of prohibitionist, but we're going to have to work with him and his legislature. So keep that in mind. And the other thing you can do is be a member of Suncoast Normal. We are a membership-based company, a 501c4, correct?
Yes.
And we could use your help not only in your talent and your treasure and your time, which I've been told is a big thing for MBAs. And if you want to give us your treasure or your time, Suncoast Normal needs you. And you get a really, really neat gold pin for your lapel for those people who do like walking around with jackets on Sunday afternoon when it's going to be hot out.
You're not just getting your lapel pin. Yeah, I mean that's a really, really nice pin.
It is a really nice pin. It's a perk, but it is not a point.
But you also get once COVID kind of loosens up its reins on everybody, you get access to our events, our membership events and whatnot. You get a free membership to National Normal, and you get to really get that feeling that you're making a difference. This has affected all of our lives in some way or another, and it feels nice to know that you're some part of you is going to making things change, not only for yourself but for other people.
And where can people sign up?
Well,
Carlos,
Gary, you can sign up on suncoastnormal.org. That's suncoastnorml.org. And don't forget to follow us on social media.
It's right there.
Yeah, you can. You can follow us at suncoastnorml, right? We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're going to be back on Twitter soon. They took us down off of Twitter, but we're also going to be back up on. We're also up on YouTube as well.
We're like the New York Post, aren't we?
We're basically, they censored us. I think it was for spam, but whatever.
we were educating too many people too quickly. They just couldn't handle it.
You were smoking spam?
You can smoke spam.
It's probably a strain out there somewhere called spam.
I bet you can take that, when you take it out of the can, it's like a block of ham. I bet you can make that into a pipe.
If you get the long tube ones, the little Vienna sausage looking spams, you could probably put a pin in it,
Yeah, you could.
I always wondered if you could actually smoke a Vienna sausage like a blunt. But we'll work on that later.
This is the grossest thing I've ever heard. I think we should just end the show now, guys. Let's just end the show.
Peace out, guys.
Bye,
Thank you,
y'all.
Instagram.
Time for our outro.